Yeah, I got a teachable moment here I want to share. I was talking today earlier with an old friend, I guess you can say, back in Virginia. You guys know I used to live out there for a while. And there's an ex out there with whom I have remained in contact for the last 6 or 7 years since I've been gone. We were really close and we're still real cool now. She's the closest thing that a man can have to a female friend. But anyway, we were talking and she was telling me about this guy that she recently went out with on a date. But before I talk about him, let me talk about the guy before him. Okay, there was a guy before this, the guy she called me about today. There's this older guy from maybe about a month or so ago. And she and this guy went out on a date. Several, I guess. And they were kind of dating or whatever. Anyway, this guy wasn't really one to call her regularly or express himself. And she used to call me telling me this, that she likes him, but he doesn't express himself enough. She likes him, but he doesn't call enough. You know, all of this. And from the way she described him, he was selfish in that he did things pretty much on his terms and on his terms only. And then he was, of course, stingy with the affection and his emotions, which really is the way a guy should be. But we'll get back to that. So she would call me upset because she was liking this guy, or so she thought. And he wasn't really giving her the energy that she wanted. And eventually that just sort of withered away and that guy was gone. So fast forward to now. There's this guy now to whom she was attracted. So they started talking and eventually went out on this date, which happened yesterday. Now, she said that in her conversations with this guy, this newer guy, that she would say things to him like, please share with me, how you feel, speak openly with me. You don't have to hide anything and all of this kind of shit. Typical shit that, females say, right? But a guy is supposed to know better, right? You don't declare your feelings for a woman. You have to be reticent and you can't be overly willing to share your feelings. You have to sort of hide your affection for a woman. That's just proper decorum, if you will, in relating to a woman. So, unfortunately, he took her at her word and he shared his feelings with her, the thoughts that would race through his head about her body and how physically attracted to her he was. And so when they went out on the date, she was feeling him, but by the time they got to her house after the date she said that she didn't fuck him, but they just kissed and talked and this and that. She said that he was saying, I don't want to have sex with you right away because I don't want us to do something that we will regret. And she was like, okay, or whatever. So they were just, kissing, touching, whatever. And then he was like, yo, your ass is so fat and it's you got a big heavy ass. Yo, I didn't know you had it like that and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, damn, girl, I can already see right now you're going to have me open and blah, blah, blah. So he's just pouring it on, right? And he's just telling her how attractive she is. And he was like, yeah, and all my all my guys, tell me I'm a sucker for love and this and that. He's like, but I'm gonna have to, I can already see you gonna have me, da da da. So he was just fucking her bad, right? Telling her all this shit. And she told me, she was like, it was okay that he said all of that. She was like, because I was saying the same things to him. You know what I'm saying? So it was both of us. But, and this is the key right here. She said, like, after he left, I really was just like, whatever. And she said that her attraction to him has sort of diminished. And so at first she struggled to articulate why. And so I did it for her. I said, well, it was because he declared his feelings and because he, the way he was talking was weak and it turned you off, because, the balance was off. I said, one thing that guys know is that a woman is always supposed to be more into you than you are into her, regardless of what she says. So just like you told him, oh, share your feelings with me and, talk openly with me and da 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 da. And you said all of that. He was supposed to know not to do that. He was supposed to ignore all that bullshit you was talking about. Now, you were telling him all of this. And at the time, you probably meant that. And you meant well, like, I want this guy to be open with me and express himself, express his emotions like females will tell a guy to do. But yet when a guy follows that advice, it always backfires, and she said that she did not know that she would feel that way. I said, well, that's precisely it. A guy is supposed to know that you're going to feel that way. You're never going to know that as a woman. Women tell men to do all sorts of things that will kill that woman's attraction for him, unbeknownst to her. But he's got to know that. You know what I'm saying? So he fucked up because where she was once very, very attracted to him, now that he declared his feelings and he was all wide open, like she told him to be, well, she's not all that interested anymore. And it's deep because the guy who she would call an asshole before him did the very opposite of what she told this new guy to do. And she chased that guy. But this guy, she says he's nice. And it's fucked up, too, because I could see her pushing him into the friend zone because she was like, but he's nice and, he's cool and I'm still going to speak. When you hear a female say that, it's over. It's a wrap. Now, she did say, I'm still attracted to him and he can, we can still kick it. So I can see that he can recover if he just does a 180, but I don't see that happening. She's pushing him into the friend zone, so this goes to show that the asshole-ish, jerkish, and that's being, I'm saying being an asshole, being a jerk, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an asshole or jerk. Just being reserved, being reticent, being maintaining your self-possession as a man is the standard, okay, for what a man should be in his dealings with women. Always maintain your self-possession, your composure, and only minimally share your feelings, because you have to keep that attraction balance the way it's supposed to be. And again, generally you want that woman to be more attracted to you, more into you than you are into her, because of course this also goes into the instinctive desire of a woman to be dominated and to feel like she is being led. Okay, and when you're the one that's pursuing her and sharing a lot of your feelings and all of that kind of stuff, then you're messing up the balance, and now she starts to feel like the leader, and that's not good. It's also not good to have some sort of equality bullshit where you try to maintain this balance where she calls you, you call her. She says I love you, you say I love you. And you try to match. That's not good either. And so this, again, is something that men have to know, because your average female is not going to say what I'm saying. She's going to say, no, I think it's very manly. I think it's very attractive when a man shares his feelings and blah, 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 and all this bullshit. But see, what you have to understand is a female is going to essentially tell you to act like a female. She's going to try to sort of reproduce, in some respects, the female dynamic with you if you allow it. You know, and so the same way that a woman, I'm kind of going off, I'm kind of digressing here a bit, but the same way that a woman will work against her own interests in a personal relationship, this is how she'll work against her own interests in life as well. Women are silly like that. Well, they will do things without really being aware of what the consequences are, just sort of oblivious. That's how women are. So like she said, well, yeah, I told him to do this, that, and the other. You know, I told him to share this with me and blah, 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 blah. And look, now you're not even attracted to the dude. You see? So a man, when it comes to romantic relationships, he sort of has to think for the woman and think for himself. And that same thing translates into life in general. Men have to think for women and think for ourselves. And the same thing with relationships in life. We have to protect women from themselves in relationships. We have to protect women from themselves in life. But we can't do that without having the requisite self-knowledge and confidence, as well as knowledge of women. See, men have to know themselves and know women. Men have to know what's good for men, and they have to know what's good for women. Women only have to know what's good for themselves and children. And even with knowing what's good for themselves, they still need a man to stand over them. And even with children, they still need a man to stand over them. And that's why there is one who said that the woman is only the most responsible teenager in the house. You see, so, and he was talking about whether this is your girlfriend, your wife. He wasn't talking about siblings. He was saying that even your wife is still no more than the, she's still just a teenager in her mentality. Okay, in her maturity. But anyway, I kind of digressed a bit there, but I felt this was a teachable moment because I talk to her pretty regularly and she tells me what's going on in her life and this and that. And I was like, wow, look at the difference in how she's feeling. Even though that first guy had her frustrated, she was highly interested in him and more interested in him than I think he was in her. Whereas this guy is showing an equal interest and she's turned off essentially already. So guys, you got to know, man, keep your feelings to yourself. And it's always better to err on the side of selfishness and assholeish. And the thing is, you don't even have to, it's not about being an asshole or being a jerk. It's about understanding. If you go back to my video, Diary of a Male Chauvinist Pig, I think I've touched on this also in my other video, The Low Self-Esteem of the Western Male. It's about understanding your value as a man and the fact that you are superior to the female, you know, based on some of the things I've already mentioned in this video. You are superior to the woman physically. You are superior to her mentally. And so you have to act that way. You understand? You have to expect and demand her submission and that she follow. But you can do this in a very tactful, gentlemanly way, which is how I tend to be. You know, I can be an asshole. But see, the thing about being an asshole is that you're never going to lose a chick behind that. It's very rare that you're going to lose a woman behind being an asshole. Obviously, if you do anything to the extreme, if you're just an extreme asshole and you provide her with no shade, if you will, or you provide her with no affection and you're just 100% jerk, that's not going to work. But you have a very high threshold for being a jerk when it comes to females, because for them that all translates as dominance and strength. See, They don't look at things morally. Women are essentially amoral. They're not looking at things in terms of right and wrong as much as they're looking at it in terms of how it makes them feel instinctively. This is where we get into the woman as savage, where her intellect takes a back seat to her instincts and her emotions. This is what keeps her sort of on the level of the savage. It's funny because we generally think of barbarian and savage in reference to males and things that males do. We don't generally use that term in reference to females, but the female is actually a natural savage, okay, in terms of her the dominance of her emotions and instincts over her intellect. And so for us men, when we deal with women, when we deal with life, we often think in terms of what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, principles and you know, principles like reciprocity and integrity and honor and honesty. These various moral principles. Women don't think like that. And so when you're dealing with a woman, often as men, we look at things in terms of, well, I want to do something sweet for her. I want to do something to make her smile. I want to do something to make her happy, right? But for a woman, now that is coming from a moral place, right? Of selflessness and you know, of course, wanting to make someone smile and doing kind things, right, is something that we consider to be morally upright and good, right? We consider it to be good in all cases. When is it ever not good to be very kind and giving and all of that? Well, one example is in your relationships with women. That's actually quite counterproductive. It's women interpret your behavior generally as a man in terms of strength and weakness. That's all. That's the continuum. There's the strength on one end and weakness on the other, and everything that you do for her is going to be, or against her, is going to be evaluated in terms of strength and weakness, not right and wrong. And that's why, if you don't understand that, that's why female behavior won't make sense to you. You say, well, why is it that he treats her like an asshole, but she loves him? Because you're looking at it as a man in terms of it being morally wrong how he treats her. She's looking at it in terms of how it makes her feel instinctively. She feels dominated. Same thing with rape. Why do women have rape fantasies? Guys don't understand. They say, wait a minute, that's violating her body. That's morally wrong. She's not looking at it that way. She's looking at it in terms of strength, dominance. You see, so females evaluate. So when you're thinking about doing something nice for a woman, be very careful with how often you do these things, you know, and how much energy you put into that, because chances are you are conveying a message of weakness where you think you are conveying a message of honor to her. Women are not honorable. They don't recognize honor. They don't really recognize integrity, any of that. You know, I talked in my other video, Diary of a Male Chauvinist Pig, about, or not that one, it was in the video on the long memory of a woman. And I talked about how they're very, very unappreciative. They're very much like a child. They don't appreciate the good that you do for them. That doesn't really register for them. You know, what sticks out the most when you're dealing with a savage, which is children and women, are the pain, okay, physical pain, and as well as emotional pain, especially in the case of females. And then they have the "what have you done for me lately" thing, so that the good things that you do are only valuable in the moment. Very short memory, right? So there's a diminished intellectual capacity with children and women, and a very short memory. You know, women and children have short memories. They're in the moment, and you only really can get their attention in terms of what you're doing for them in the moment. And that has nothing to do with dispensing knowledge to them or anything intellectual. It has to do with the pain that you are putting on them or the pleasure that you are providing. So, I mean, that's, again, when you're talking about the savage, they just deal with pain and pleasure. They're not dealing with intellect. And so this also has implications for domestic violence. I've been meaning to do a video on the proper application of that. Because when you're dealing with an unreasonable creature, like a child or a woman, it necessitates that you have to use physical force in order to make your point. Because you're dealing with a creature that does not really adhere to rationality, to objectivity, as a way of communicating and learning. You're dealing with a creature that deals with the world based largely on instinct and emoting. Okay, and so with women, a certain measure of domestic violence was always a part of the dynamic, the relationship, if it was necessary, because that's the one thing, when you think about how many times we've got into these discussions with irrational women, and in your heart that the only thing that will set her straight is a good slap to the face or to be throttled. But you can't do that because of the law. But deep down, a woman wants you to do that. And when a woman is arguing with you, she's not interested in arriving at the truth. I talked to you about that before, right? She's interested in arriving at a good feeling. But aside from that, she's also looking for you to assert dominance. And for her, you asserting dominance, just like a savage, right? An animal, you don't assert your dominance through reason. You assert your dominance through physicality. All right. Now, obviously, you don't become physical with a woman in the way that you would with a man. That's common sense. OK, there's a thin line between the proper application of domestic violence and just outright abuse. All right. But I think that gentlemen understand how to properly apply that. So, the rules of engagement. There are clear rules of engagement for men and women that are different from men versus men and women and women. It's not the same. And we have this nonsense now, especially with feminism, where we do this. All of us are equal, and we're all men and women are the same capacities, same inclinations. And, we can just all reason with you. It's all bullshit. And it's interesting because I recently read a piece on corporal punishment, and it was a piece in favor of corporal punishment. I am in favor of corporal punishment, and it talked about how when you're dealing with a child whose reasoning ability is naturally not that of an adult, sometimes only becoming physical will get your point across and be convincing enough. The use of the intellect is not going to be convincing to someone or a child or a female whose basic modality is that of emotion and instinct. So what do we have? We have situations where now we don't physically chastise the kids. We give them time out and all of this other bullshit that has no real impact on the child in terms of correcting the child. Children laugh at this timeout bullshit and all the other non-physical measures that these damn unnatural albino white motherfuckers are coming up with and spearheading. We have women who are completely out of order. You look at women in Western cultures, we can't slap them without going to jail. But if you go to these other cultures, these Asian cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, even African, it's understood that a woman will be slapped or throttled if she gets out of line, and women appreciate that. They're never going to verbalize that. Again, you can't take any of the things that I'm saying and try to have that conversation with a woman, because this is below the level of the conscious mind. A man has to know this. He has to cultivate this wisdom within himself and stand on it, regardless of what any bitch says or any simp. You have to know this. But you look at how women conduct themselves. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Look at how women conduct themselves in these other cultures. Look at how happy and content they are versus these American feminist women or Western feminist women. You know, there have been shows that I've seen a news piece once where it talked about how women are actually less happy than they were before feminism, became prominent as an ideology. Women want to be dominated, they want to be led, and they want to know that you will put them in their place. Please excuse that noise. I'm taking a walk and this guy's working on his car. But these other women are comfortable and content largely in these other cultures because there are clear boundaries set, and they are very aware of their position, their duties, their responsibilities as females versus the males. Okay. And the last thing I want to say is this is good for female psychology in the same way having structure and discipline is good for a child. Children appreciate when parents chastise them physically, verbally, punish them, but a child is never going to say that. And often a child will not express this appreciation until later when the child has become a young adult. But children who don't receive that structure, that discipline, that order, and being led, that hierarchy, actually come to resent the parents, but it's subconscious. And they feel subconsciously, they feel this, and they feel unloved and rejected by parents who don't establish these clear boundaries and have that discipline. And it's the same thing with women. Western women, from a psycho-spiritual standpoint, are very resentful toward men because they feel like these Western men are weak. These Western men are not laying the law and setting the boundaries. And so the women are confused about their sexuality. They're confused about their duties. They're confused about their femininity, as well as the men are. For as much as, we talk about feminism and how it has impacted the mind of a woman, it has also profoundly twisted the mind of the man. Where now he has become, as I've mentioned before, very eager to negotiate and compromise with a woman. And now she finds herself being very assertive, dominant, and unyielding. So, providing that structure and that discipline actually makes for happy children and happy women. But just to end it, in terms of what I started this video on, gentlemen, when it comes to romantic relationships, there is hardly ever an instance where you should listen to a woman. You should just know. If you don't know what's good for you and for that woman, then you should not be romantically involved with women.